So this is a quick demo of SDB, which is a lightweight server front end for a time series storage engine, and SDB Python, which is basic module to talk to SDB. So I'm going to start up a fresh new SDB instance and start up Python, and I'm going to import a couple of modules, including the SDB module. I'm going to make a new client using the local host address. And I'm going to make sure it's running properly by getting a list of sources. So obviously there's nothing on the database right now, so we get an empty list of sources. So I'm not going to go into details about how everything works, but I'm just going to go through the basic functionality of this. So the first thing we want to do is insert some time series data. And we do this by inserting a bunch of rows, and each row has a source, which is a string, a metric, which is also a string, a timestamp, which is an integer, and for this I'm going to use the current Unix timestamp and a value, which is a float. So we get true back. That means the row was successfully inserted into the database. So if we run sources again, we get one source. So one other thing we can do is list the metrics for any given source. So in this case, there's only one. Yeah, so we can get some metadata using sources and metrics, and we can insert rows. The next thing to do is to query. So you can do this by sort of giving a list of query descriptions. It looks a lot like inserting rows. You basically give a source and a metric, and give some sort of time range. So in this case, give relative time range using -1000 to imply 1000 seconds ago, and set the end timestamp to right now. And as you can see, we get this object back. And this basically has a bunch of series, but in this case we only get one series back because we only passed in one query description. And we get some metadata like the last timestamp and the first timestamp and so on. So basically all of this stuff is happening directly on the storage engine. So the database server itself just serves as like the HTTP layer for basically everything that's happening on the storage engine. So all this like querying stuff happens directly on the storage engine. The HTTP server basically just translates these timestamps, but these relative timestamps into absolute timestamps. But besides that, most of it happens on the storage engine library itself. So if I like tab back into the server window, you basically see a bunch of log messages coming from the storage engine itself. So as you can see, it has a write-ahead log that it manages, and it basically does basically shards time series data into multiple partitions, and deals with the logic of querying across partitions and stuff like that. So, because the other thing I didn't mention was you can insert more than one row at a time, and when you do that, it basically acts as a batch write. So if I had this row and basically add another one, so both of these writes would happen sort of as a batch, and they get batched up into the write-ahead log as well. And when you query, you can do the same thing. You basically give multiple query descriptions, and you basically get a batch response. So in this case, we get 2 series back. The last thing is, if you have a lot of data points, and let's say you wanted to graph your time series, oftentimes what happens is, you're plotting at 1 second resolution, and your plots are only 300 pixels, but you get an hour's worth of data, and you have lots more points than you have pixels. So one thing you want to do is downsample. We actually can do that by passing in the downsample parameter, and you give it the number of points to average. So in this case, if I give 10, it averages 10 points. But obviously, since I don't have that many points, I just get 1 point back, and basically takes it's giving the raw values back, but in the case when you have more than 10 points, it actually averages and gives you back the first point or first timestamp for those 10 points. So yeah, that's basically it. And as you can see in the back end, there's a bunch of querying happening, and yeah, it's pretty neat.